All right, welcome everyone to the release webinar for the Curity Identity Server version 10.4. It is a minor release with major contents that we'll talk about today. And with me, I have Renato, our chief engineer, and Matas, one of our engineers who's been working on one of the features that we're going to talk about today. My name is Jakob, and I'm the CTO here at Curity. This release has been worked on for quite some time. We have introduced a bunch of new, brand new components and subsystems in the product. And the first one that we'd like to introduce today is the new self-service portal. And it is a companion to the user management profile, if you will. But it is an application that runs in the application profile that lets end users manage their own identities. So I was hoping that Matas could actually talk a little bit about this and demo it for us here right now. So I'll hand over the screen share to you, Matas.
Yeah, hi. My name is Matus Marko, and I'm excited to show you our latest feature, self-service portal. So after configuration, which I have ready here, we are greeting with welcome page. What you can do here, you can change your name, verify email, phone, and manage address. Then what you can do, you can list your linked accounts associated with your account and remove items if they are not valid, for example. Then you can change password. You can add OTP authenticator, which I will show you now. We can give it a name. And I will just scan the OTP with my device.
And this could be something like the Google Authenticator app or the Microsoft Authenticator app or something like that, right?
Yeah, thanks. I have already set up Google Authenticator on site, so we will just use it here. I got the code and I enter it to this screen, and we can see we have success. We can now try, can use this authenticator. I will be using our OAuth tools that I have pre-configured. Here we can see I will use this OTP and add the new code from my authenticator. We see we get received code, and we can redeem that code. So
exactly. So what we're looking at here is an out-of-band way to manage your authentication method as an end user, which is something that only has been available in APIs before.
Yeah, okay, so you can add more or also, of course, remove OTP. Similar, we have it for passkeys. The process is basically the same. I would like to also show you the multi-factor authenticator. You can manage factors. Here I already opted in for email authenticator, but the same way I can opt, for example, for SMS. Will here on site just receive the code from phone, and after validating it, we see that got added. Right. So that's probably demo effect. So yeah.
Right. You can do that same for passkeys and so on. So multi-factor authentication, it sounds a bit confusing, obviously, because typically we think of TOTP and passkeys as multi-factor authenticators, but they only are multi-factor if you set them up in a multi-factor flow, right? So using the what do we call that? The opt-in MFA action. So this is really governing the opt-in MFA action. So if you opt in on a second factor, you can govern that here. So what do we have here? Apps and services. This is also a new concept that we introduced.
Yeah, so here you can show and manage granted authorizations. Here we can see that which clients you gave authorization for. So first it's self-service client, which is client responsible for this portal. So naturally that has access to these scopes, and claim, which was required by the configuration of the portal. And also in my demo, I was requesting read and open ID scope in the first step. So we can see that that authorization was granted here as well.
Which means that if you revoke this access here to client 1, you couldn't use the refresh token anymore of that first flow that you ran over there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great.
Oh, yeah, so that's it.
Right. Thank you, Marco. Matas. We have spent a lot of time on this. It's a highly customizable feature, meaning you can, depending on how your authentication workflow is set up, you can customize the portal and it will adapt itself to your current setup. So if you don't use passkeys, for instance, you can disable those things, or if you don't want the user to be able to edit their address, you can disable that, but still show the address and other things like that. The portal itself will be released in the future as a GitHub repository so that you could customize it fully if you want to. But for now, it is released as an application in the product. So that will be a future release of Curity. But underneath of this, we've also added a bunch of interesting things. We saw the granted authorizations. That was an API we added a few releases ago, GraphQL API on the token profile to manage the sort of grants, if you will, when you speak OAuth, the relationship between a client and a resource owner and the authorization server. We also added a new API in this release, which is bullet 3 here, the device management API, and that's what Matas was using, or the self-service portal was using, to create new TOTP devices, delete the ones that exist, passkeys and other things like that, so that you can control these things, not only just add them bluntly, but it contains the operation to verify that device actually exists and is in possession. So it's a multi-step API, very interesting and powerful to use, and it's located under the accounts API of the user management profile. Let's see, I think there was a question maybe that came in. Can the admin configure what options should be visible to the end user? Yes, exactly. So you can configure a lot of those options and decide that on your own. The multi-factor flows, they're contingent on the opt-in MFA action to be used. But there are other mechanisms as well that can fit well with this portal. So reach out if you need any help on this, but otherwise we're looking forward to hearing feedback on this and suggestions and ideas on what to do. Another big feature that we added was a new profile. We did a preview release in June just to highlight what this is and what it will be, but now is the real first version of our SAML Identity Provider profile, or the SAML IDP profile. So up until this point, Curity has had 4 profiles. We had the authentication profile, token profile, and the apps profile, where we have the token handler and now the self-service portal. Now we added the SAML profile, which links directly to an authentication profile. I have a bit of a small screen here. The SAML profile similar to OAuth, you can set up some general things like which types of SAML flows do you want to allow. In this release, we support the redirect binding and the post binding. We will add the artifact binding in a subsequent release. We also support, similar to claims, you can map attributes. So here I have the email attribute set up. It's provided by an attribute value provider that's very similar to a claims provider, where you can look up your attributes from various sources. You can pick which ones you pick from that source, and you can also do transformations like you can for claims on how you want that attribute to look once it's in the assertion, in this case, the SAML assertion. You can also create attribute groups, which is a sort of a convenience. If you want to map many attributes to a service provider, you can map them through groups instead. And then, of course, there's service providers. So service providers are the equivalent of clients when it comes to SAML. So this is where you set up your service provider and where you add which attributes and whatnot it should be having, and the security and how the user should authenticate. So this is similar to OAuth, how the client is set up, just in a sort of SAML fashion. Very interesting and new addition to our product. Previously, you could integrate SAML through the authentication profile by setting up protocols, which meant you could have a SAML server somewhere like ADFS or something else, and then use that for connecting to the actual applications, and then use Curity for authentication. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can set up your SAML application directly towards Curity. More coming on this. We're adding more to this profile in every release, hopefully going forward. We will also add the capability of storing these service providers in the database and managing over GraphQL like we do with regular clients. So those are two big ones. And the fourth addition here that is in the highlights is we also added a new look and feel editor, or an updated look and feel editor in the admin UI. So as many of you probably have seen over the years, there is a way to style the login screens directly in the UI. You don't have to go and touch templates or anything like that. We updated this to be more easy to find on where things are. So if I want to manage the colors, I can more easily find them here in the links or forums or section, wherever I want to do. And a bigger update is that it's also possible now to create many themes. So if you don't do anything, it will affect every screen you see, but you can also create a new theme, my theme, and do additions or changes to that, and then assign that to a client or a service provider or something like that, and it will only apply when the user is logging in through that application. So similar to template areas, you select them in the same place. Where you select the template area, you can select the themes as well. And if you name your template area the same as the theme, both will apply. So very new, great, good, powerful concept now for theming, both advanced and simple. So that was the highlight. So let's dive into the actual enhancements of this product release. First of all, we did some area role updates in the admin UI for usability. We also added a function for DB clients or database clients in the OAuth profile, so that the query string can be used to map directly to certain queries if you want to share certain queries when you look up clients.
It's basically a bookmarkable query.
Exactly. Quite useful, I think, if you have many and want to talk about them with your teammates. We also added a description column in the authenticators list so that you can more quickly see, not just the name and what it's using, but also your description of the authenticator. If you have many, it tends to be hard to know which one is which. Multi-theme support we already talked about. We also organized the tabs like I showed in the look and feel editor, that it's more clear what you work on. And this one, Renato, we added request validation procedures. This is a bit of a hidden feature, I would say, in the product, but quite useful.
Yeah, exactly. It's we always had the validation procedure for authenticators, and that you could just create a procedure there to validate anything basically that's sent in the request to the authenticator. So that was quite useful to validate certain things about the form that you send to create a user, for example. But what we were missing was that in the sign up action, there was no such procedure. And that was just an omission that we didn't have really time to implement, because that was always going to be useful to do that. So decided to finally do it. And yeah, it addresses the same kind of problem that you can solve for authenticators. You can now also do in any authentication action, but we did it specifically for the sign up action.
Great. Yeah, that's a useful one. Those procedures are a good escape hatch also when you need to do advanced things. We added a log message when an action returns a failure result. This was a support case, so it's good to highlight here.
Yeah, it's one of the small tickets that we are working on to improve error reporting. There are many more fixes coming up soon, but yeah, just wanted to mention that this is just one small step towards improving error reporting in the server.
Yeah. On the opt-in MFA action, we had some UX issues when switching back and forth between the factors and the pages there, and that has been updated to give a better user experience there. Hopefully that solves a lot of problems there for some of you. This one, add setting to ignore account that is not verified. This is interesting and quite useful. Renato, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, there has been some issues when you create an account. Depending on how you do it, there are various ways to configure the server. But in some scenarios, what could happen is that somebody starts registration, but they don't finish it.
And they don't verify the account or something like
that.
Yeah,
exactly.
They don't activate it.
Perhaps they decide to not do it at all, or perhaps they just typoed or something and they start it over again and they enter the correct email or a different email address. But what happens in those cases is that you end up with how to say, like a or garbage. Yeah, almost like garbage in the database that you would have to clean up by yourself. And that's quite inconvenient. So we decided to expire those kind of accounts. If you configure this new setting, that means that once this time expires without an activation occurring, so that's important. Like we will only do this if the account was not activated within this timeout you configured explicitly. So it's not by default doing any of that. But in case this happens, we will allow a registration of an account with the same phone number or an email address. But to do that, we will first delete the account. Yep. So it sounds a bit, like perhaps dangerous, but this, first of all, does not kick in by default. It only applies to accounts that have been created but not activated, which means that they are basically useless. You couldn't have anybody logging in, for example, with those accounts because it's not activated. So that's why we decided it's in a controlled manner we can delete this account.
Yeah,
and that's what the setting will enable us.
Yeah, so it's good housekeeping. It sounds like to use this.
Yeah, I would advise probably for everybody who has this flow. Perhaps you don't have that. You have other means like a sign up action or other methods that perhaps this does not apply. But if it applies to you, this is definitely something you should enable.
Yeah, good one. For the self-service portal, we created a specific authorization manager, the self-service authorization manager, to be more, to make it more easy to configure and to manage and to reflect those permissions back to the portal as well, so that the portal can adapt and not show the user things that the user can't manage anyway. So you'll see this manager, but you won't have to touch it in the authorization manager's page. You can, but you don't have to. You can touch this. It will be governed by the self-service portal configuration page entirely. But you'll see it there in the configuration. Site text we added for Postgres.
Right. Yeah, Postgres has this special text type that is case insensitive text, CI texts. And this was added because certain columns of a table are like you don't want to make them case sensitive. So for example, email address, you probably want to have them case insensitive. And unless you had transformations that already handled this casing of the email addresses, you might have trouble with that because users may not understand that it's it's casing sensitive. So this was added also to make it much easier to allow having columns that are casing sensitive.
Cool. A couple updates on the front end templates, the UI kit, as we call it. You will notice that there are more CSS variables in the main files there because of the self-service portal. Those variables apply just to the portal. Otherwise, there's a big reuse. Obviously, it's the same theming, but there are more things needed for the portal as well. Also, some updates to colors and themings on buttons to unify that. And we did some work on accessibility also, specifically if you use the device flow when you enter the user code. It's been updated a bit according to the required guidelines.
Yeah, I believe the guidelines are exactly the one that we just demoed, where you have a little box for each number. Right?
Exactly, that's the thing. So that's been updated. Kotlin, we keep updating when we can. We want to stay recent on that. I don't think there was anything breaking on this one, right?
No, it's mostly the developer experience for Kotlin improved quite a lot recently with this latest release. I believe they already switched to the new compiler, which is faster and just better. So we wanted to already allow customers to benefit from that.
Right. Cool. And like we said, we had the new profile, we have the new self-service portal. Here was a small update. We learned that some gateways don't respect the X-forwarded 4 header properly, so they add the port to the host in what the value they send when sending the X-forwarded 4, which obviously then didn't match what you had whitelisted in the product. So we have added some leniency there and stripped the port if we see that on the forwarded 4 header there to make sure that works. I don't remember which gateways that was. Could have been Cloudflare or Amazon or so, but either way, it should be more lenient now and let you handle that properly. And here, this one, Renato, let me say a few words on the request.
Sure. Yeah. Response. So it's a you might, if you know the inner workings of the HTTP protocol, there is something called the 100 continue, which is the client requests that the server first process the headers and the path and let it know if it should send the body or not. So it's basically trying to kind of save one trip to the server. If perhaps the body is a large body and you want to just confirm everything is okay and the request should work given the body. When the client did that, we were not adding the request body to the log message that we issued. And yeah, this could be problematic because the server might have said, yes, I want to receive it, please send it, but then we wouldn't log it properly. So we fixed that problem now. It's a little bit tricky because we need to wait for the server to process and we only will log because of that. We will only log if the request body was read by the server at some point before the logging happens.
Yeah.
So that's how this works now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the HTTP protocol is quite intense. We're trying to make sure we're up to snuff on that. We increased the HSM, the hardware security module interface or integration slot ID length. There was some issues around that. So
yeah, I believe we just had insufficient length for some cases. So we just increased it.
That's right. And remove log message for education static credential management factory. This was something, there was a warning or an info level log there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think this was a temporary log message that was just trying to warn that the password might change because the server was applying a URL encoding to it.
Yeah.
And I believe this was just for a couple of releases we kept it up, and hopefully by now it's unnecessary to have that. But we wanted to make it very clear that this message will not come up anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It shouldn't be necessary.
Because in 10.0, previous to 10.0, we treated the password slightly different, incorrectly, and we changed that, which was obviously a breaking change, so that we added that info warning message, and now that's gone. So that's minor. And like we said before, we added a brand new GraphQL API, the device management API, which is under the account management API.
Which I believe we just saw in action via this self-service portal, right?
Yep.
He also uses that API.
And we have some corrections, as always, in the release. We'll go through them as well. On the OIDC authenticator, it wasn't possible to pick the algorithm properly, and that's been fixed. We have a mix-up of 2 configuration fields for the opt-in MFA authentication action modal, and that has been fixed as well. And we allow configuring the attribute for lookups and display name for WebAuth. And this is a bit of a corner case. I'm not even sure we should call this a bug, to be honest. But when using passkeys or WebAuth and similar devices, you can now configure what display name you want, what attribute you want to use as display name when storing that in the browser. This is really into the, into the details of how WebAuth and passkeys work. But we know in some cases users or organizations want control over that, so we've added that. The authentication service, we fixed name of ACR attributes in dynamic authenticator config. This was interesting.
It was this was a new feature in I think 2 releases ago, or I don't know if it was only 1 release ago, but we added the dynamic authenticator configuration there that had unfortunately, there was a misspelling of the ACR. It was always supposed to be authenticator context class reference. And I believe we called it authentication, not authenticator. And we had to, unfortunately, rename that. This is only going to affect you if you have already configured a dynamic authenticator with a data source. Because if you did, you will need to update the data in your data source to have the correct spelling, and the spelling should have matched the static configuration.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully we don't have that data in the wild, but if you do, or if you need help, contact us on that. We had some updates to BankID on the progress bar, visibility change. The OpenID Connect authenticator, we had a cache misbehaving there.
Yes, this was a regression that came in, I believe, around 1 year ago. That we made a change to how the internals of how it works, how we fetch the data from OpenID metadata endpoint, and the cache actually stopped working, and we started making a request for the metadata every time somebody authenticated, which was obviously wrong. And we fixed that now, and now we basically ignore the configuration of the HTTP client that's used for fetching this data, and that was the problem. We were looking at which client was being used, and that was not enough for us to understand that, oh, this can be cached or not. So we decided that it's not really helpful. So if you change the HTTP client configuration, we will keep caching now, which was not the case before, but you can just reconfigure the cache. So just change it to a short time if you really need to flush the cache, so that it will only cache for a short time, and then restore the previous value again. That should flush the cache.
Yeah. Hopefully there's not an issue with the cache itself, but you had some issues that it didn't cache before in some cases. So the nonce token issuer allowed multiple introspections. This was an edge case, so it's not a general nonce token issuer for token services, but in the SDK, there could be cases where you could introspect or consume the same nonce more than once in a short time frame. That has been fixed as well.
Yeah, and just to make it very clear, this was like you would need to make 2 requests exactly at the same time to be able to have this happen.
Yeah,
it was extremely unlikely, and we can't even reproduce that.
No,
but just to be sure, we ensured 100% now. It's impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, the template area was not used as expected when sending emails using the MFA condition. So the MFA conditions could send out emails, and those obviously should follow the template area that was set on the on the flow at that time, either on the authenticator or the action, and that's been fixed as well. Yeah, quite a massive release. Yeah, I would say it's fun when these come out. We have a lot of stuff going on in the train as well for the fall. A lot of interesting features and additions we're doing. So stay tuned for our next release. I think we'll see each other again in September. End of September, we'll have the release webinar the week after the release, as usual. So till then, have a nice afternoon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mattis.
Thank you.